Hello and welcome back to HR Stew. My name is Regina Dyerly.
And I'm Holly Nels.
And this is HR Stew.
As 2024 comes to a close, we're looking back at the trends, shifts, and stories that shaped workplaces this year. From AI advancements to DE&I initiatives, regulatory changes to the impact of the election year, there has been no shortage of highs and lows. Join us as we unpack the best and worst of 2024 and reflect on what it all means going into 2025. Today we're joined by Vida HR's very own Faith Atkins, who is our Director of Employee Relations. Faith, with 27 years of HR leadership experience in a variety of industries and company sizes, is our leader in handling complex employee investigations, maintaining thorough and compliant processes for our clients. Welcome, Faith.
Glad to be here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
So I'm going to start with a general question. Professionally, what has been the most uniquely challenging part of 2024?
It's just gone by so quickly. That's the main thing. But I do think that one of the challenges has been helping small to medium-sized businesses really adjust to many of the, state and federal changes, regulatory changes. And it's so fast-paced that it's just really challenging to help everyone be able to apply those changes effectively in their workplaces without disruptions.
Well, and then too, just for instance, the changes to the salary exempt threshold, the federal changes, that we had so many clients reaching out. We need to add timekeeping because we can't afford to adjust our exempt employees that high. And we need to add timekeeping. So then we have meetings about timekeeping and then that gets knocked down and we don't have to move forward at this point. But it's just putting these companies, small to medium sized companies, in panic about what they can do and what we can implement for them to help them with their processes.
Really true. A lot was done and then undone.
Right.
And we'll continue that. I think 2024 was just a challenging year for a lot of people all around. I think we still have high levels of burnout, still a lot of layoffs, which mean people are generally picking up the slack for other people. I know a big topic, and I think we'll talk about it later, for SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, is incivility. That's their whole mantra this year or something. I don't know. That's not the right word, but their focus is on incivility, trying to cure it, I guess, if that's possible in this divided society. I think it's just been a very challenging year, especially leading up to the election and after, for sure.
Yeah, I do think there was a lot of anxiety leading up to the election. And so SHRM was being proactive in rolling out the civility approach and really planting the seed. And I think that that was really, really impressive. They were ahead of that, I think.
So we're going to talk through some of the top topics this year, condensed down, of course. But the first topic we're going to cover is artificial intelligence. AI has been one of the hottest topics in 2024, transforming how we work, hire, innovate, but it hasn't come without controversy, of course. What do you think was the biggest AI win and loss in workplaces this year?
I think that AI has been embraced in a positive manner. I think both in the US and then also globally. I think that it was easy for companies and employees to embrace it just because we're all so familiar with technology. And so it kind of came naturally. But I think from an HR standpoint, we've seen the challenges because I think as much as you can use AI as a research tool, I think we're still learning how to teach people how to use it effectively and I think ethically in the workplace.
I like that you use the term ethically because that is correct. I've seen a lot of companies using it to enhance positions or enhance how they facilitate communication, how they make up plans for patients, those sort of things. But it's not being used to replace, because what is AI is only as good as the information that has been put into it. So using it to replace that human aspect and developing patient guidelines or developing anything, I'm using that one as an example, but developing those sort of things it's a slippery slope. And I really appreciate the clients that I've seen who have used it. They're using it to enhance their plans or their policies or what have you. They're not using it in place of that human aspect.
It's interesting because SHRM actually had a conference called HI plus AI. And so they've been rolling out a lot of information or what's out there actually, and fancy slogans like HI plus AI equals the real ROI.
Right.
And I use it. I think it's a useful tool for sure. I use it for recipe. I use it for all sorts of things. And it is a time saver, but I cannot believe how fast it all came out and how there is really nothing out there to protect us.
Right.
And we talked about in our recent legislative update that we put out for our clients that, the government or the government Congress is trying to roll out a no robot bosses, legislation, and it's not gone anywhere really. We're just so divided on everything. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens. The EU put out, regulations, and, we're just behind the curve here, and we're so focused on banning TikTok, that we're not even worried about AI. And speaking of TikTok, I actually saw a TikTok, I think it was like last week, and it was like a very upset unemployed person who has been looking for a job for over a year. He said he's applied for, I think the number was like over 1,400 jobs across the country. He now is, this is an educated person who had always worked. He said, they told me to go to a degree in computer science, and now I cannot find a job in computer science. And those are one of the first jobs that we've seen truly disrupted, right? Especially programmers. So look, they're saying there's going to be a lot of jobs displaced. And you know what? We're kidding ourselves if we think some of those jobs aren't in HR as well. I think we have to adapt and evolve, and just like any kind of disruption. But, I don't know. I think there's reason for some people not to be paranoid, but to have a healthy amount of nervousness about what's happening, because we're not controlling anything. We're just letting this just overrun us, maybe.
So the next topic we're going to cover is DE&I. So DE&I has remained a key focus in workplaces, though we've seen both progress and setbacks this year. Most notably, SHRM announced that they are removing equity from the acronym and making it simply IND. What are your thoughts on SHRM's decision to remove equity from the equation?
Well, sitting in my seat, the backlash, I'll call it backlash, was in some ways to me very surprising. I think that I had an awareness that equity was always kind of being questioned in that formula, because there's been challenges in defining equity. It can be defined in many different ways, right? I think that Johnny did a good job with SHRM in terms of leading the discussion, but somehow along the way there was a decision just made, and I think that just shocked a lot of people. I think that, at least in my experience, the lack of the consensus and the misunderstandings that came out, openly about removing it, just from an HR standpoint, kind of felt a little, I don't know what the word is. It just made me feel not as confident at times in having the conversations with peers and leaders. But I think at the same time, it has created some good opportunity for continued discussion around. I don't think people have lost sight of what equity is.
Yeah.
It's just, it means so many different things to different people.
Yeah.
From a leadership standpoint, all the way down to the frontline employee.
Yeah. And I think with equity in Colorado, I think of equity like equal pay, equal, opportunities, those sort of things. And in Colorado specifically, we have so many things put in place to ensure equal pay for equal work, to ensure that everybody's given the same opportunity for promotions, those sort of things. So states are putting things in place. I'm sure some of the states will never get to that level, but states are putting some things in place just to be equitable as far as pay and benefits. And that's how I think of it.
Right.
When the announcement came out, I remember us having a chat about it right when it happened. I was actually surprised at how angry people were. Just people were like, I'm canceling my SHRM membership. It's not even worth it anymore. I dissent. I remember I copied that because I actually knew the person. I had just met the person at a conference who had said that, he was head of belonging for a very large company and felt very strongly about it. I guess I saw it as a marketing ploy. From my perspective, how I interpreted it was that it was like when you rebrand to get attention, and then I actually went to another conference where Johnny spoke on it to try to address the backlash. And he didn't say that, obviously, but he was shocked at the backlash as well. Johnny had addressed the fact that he was getting calls from CEOs who wanted to do away with DEI completely. And when they had removed the E, they were saying he didn't do enough. He didn't go far enough. So I think these are just really, like we talked about earlier, polarizing times. And I guess I don't feel comfortable saying a lot more than that. But I think we'll just see how it evolves. I know that at the conference, the Visionaries Conference, where he was addressing the group, he was saying there's more coming. We have work that we're going to be doing. And they ended up purchasing or taking over management of CEO for Action for Diversity and Inclusion. And at the beginning of it, he kept on alluding to it, and then someone kind of let the cat out of the bag during the meeting. I don't really know what that means, but I know that there's going to be a lot of work done. Like, he's not moving away from it. But there's somebody who's in my executive network group who still is so upset about equity being, and that's it's her job, is DEI, and that's in her title. And she actually had a call scheduled with Johnny because they had spoken after the conference, and then he didn't show up for it.
Oh no.
He got sick. So she came onto our meeting, and we were all waiting to see what Johnny said to her, and she was like, he didn't show up. So I don't think they ever ended up rescheduling it. But I don't know. To me, it was always, I really, and maybe this is unfair, but I really just thought it was like a rebrand to keep it as a topic of conversation. And maybe I'm wrong, but just when I saw it announced, that's what I had thought. Not that he was trying to change or take something away from anything. I thought he was trying to keep it front of mind.
Well, and there are a lot of large organizations who are stepping back from the DE&I initiative altogether. I mean, huge, large retail organizations, automobile organizations, manufacturing plants that have just made the decision not to have a DE&I program at their company at all. So that was a little shocking to me, actually, when I read it in the paper that was the route that they went. And to read the comments, people just feel so on polar
There's no
opposites.
in between anymore.
Yes.
Like, people are on one side or another of most topics these days. But it is upsetting to people. People feel like something is being taken away from them, and that's not a good way to feel.
Yeah.
People get upset.
So I'll just add, I think that it's challenging for small to medium-sized businesses to fully engage and focus on dedicated DEI initiatives. So even though the E we're saying has been removed, I still think that as HR professionals, we should be able to still acknowledge that is a part of the equation in terms of creating initiatives that keep employees engaged, because that's the bottom line. There's going to be some people that perceive something being taken away, but if we help employers to have initiatives that embrace still the diversity in their workplaces, the inclusion, I believe that the equity comes with it without it necessarily being carved out.
So on that, what do you feel like were 2024's biggest wins and losses for DE&I?
Yeah, so I think, one of the big wins has been, and especially for Vida HR, is we spend a lot of time with our clients educating them on, what is DE&I. So as leaders and their employees, they understand how that is referenced and used in their workplaces. I think the challenge or the downside possibly is, how do we continue to help them use tools like engagement surveys, to use their turnover data, to help them identify additional DEI objectives that they can fulfill moving forward?
All right, so the next topic we're going to cover is the regulatory changes by federal courts. And as you know, this year brought a lot of key regulatory changes that have impacted employers and employees nationwide. They've come and gone. In your opinion, what has been the most significant regulatory change in 2024, and how did they impact workplaces like ours and others?
Well, I think Chevron being overturned is huge. I think it's going to have far-reaching implications, and I think we've already seen it. You talked about the federal exempt overtime rule or minimum wage rule, or people have had that budgeted. I mean, people had already given those increases, and then we're rolling it back. We had one circumstance with Ohio State who had given increases in November, and after the federal OT rule was blocked, they rolled it back. So people are going back to their original salaries effective in January. So I think it was like 306 employees or something like that. So just an interesting choice. But it was like, when I read the article, it said it was like $2 million annually. So understand why they did it, but certainly not popular for sure. So we're going to see a lot of things like that. There's even stuff right now that are pending, OSHA, regulation, like all of it's going to get rolled back. If we're saying that these federal agencies can't decipher their own, what was the word they use, ambiguity, when things are not super clear, and what legislation is written clearly.
Right.
Honestly, if they can't, decipher that stuff themselves, we are just going to be in the courts continually. So I don't know. I think we have some interesting times ahead in relation to that.
Even the ban on non-competes that was overturned.
Same thing. I
have a friend who, they lived in one of the southern states, not like Colorado where we have our own non-compete clause, but I have a friend that lived in one of the southern states, and they quit their job and started working for another company doing the same thing. And they had a 2-year non-compete, but they were so sure that this was going to go through and everything was going to be fine. And I don't know that there's been any repercussions for this particular person as of now. But I mean, they currently still have a 2-year non-compete that they can't go do anything within 150, might be 75-mile radius of their place of residence.
Yeah. I'll look at it from another perspective. I think that the state paid leave laws have had a huge impact.
Yes.
And as more and more states take those on, I think that though we know that it is representative of recognizing that families, need the financial support, and you want to allow them the time to take care of their medical needs or whatever needs are covered under that law, it goes back to employer being impacted in terms of their staffing levels. And I know that we get pulled into those conversations quite a bit. And so even though you have a law that you have the employer paying in, an employee paying in, it's a good benefit, but the administrative costs behind it, behind it all. And like I said, managing staffing, our unemployment levels are so low as it is. Yeah. It is hard to manage your staff with those kind of laws in place. Especially
for the clients that we service, right, who are small, and you have one person managing 2 different positions, and they're out for 12 weeks. It really does put, yeah.
But what's the answer?
It's already been voted on and put in place, so we have to.
We're not debating that. She's like, "Don't try me, Regina."
We're gonna move forward and hope it all works out and nothing falls through the cracks. And I think a big challenge, to feed off of what Faith said, is employers who have employees in multiple states, they have to manage each state's sick plan, each state's family leave plan that's required. Each state has a different minimum wage policy. So it's really managing all of those different pieces. We have some clients that are in 10, 12 different states, and then you're managing the sick plan or PTO plan that California offers, and then Colorado, and Texas doesn't have one. It's just, like Faith said, an administrative burden.
Keeps us in business.
So lastly, we're going to touch on the election. An election year always brings challenges to the workplace, whether it's political tension or policy uncertainty. What are the biggest policy issues or changes that HR professionals are watching for post-election, do you think?
I think that the AI and the Gen AI laws are going to be huge. When it just comes down to it, no matter which way we look at it, the regulatory environment is it's the Wild West right now. And it's going to continue to be, I think Forbes magazine had some great articles recently about it. Just murky. It's just not clearly defined. I know a lot of lawyers are going to be making a lot of money, you know, and that's okay. You know, it's just, I think for us as HR professionals, though, it's still just kind of nebulous. We just don't know enough. And so we have to be very creative in how we guide and advise employers on how they implement and use the technology in their workplaces.
I think with this political change that just happened during the election in November, I think we're definitely going to see a shift in legislation and things being overturned with this huge shift.
I think it'll be interesting because there might just be a lot of nothing as well. What was it? The existing president of the NLRB, they didn't win their reelection, so we know that that's going to switch to who's supporting that. I mean, definitely there's going to be a lot of changes, but also it could lead to a whole lot of nothing.
And I know that's the fear.
But don't take TikTok away.
I know that's the fear, is that it's going to lead to a whole lot of changes. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or think one way or...
People are talking about specific changes.
Yes.
So we'll see if they're able to, if they're able to pull it off.
So generally, how do you maintain workplace civility, that being a major topic this year during a polarizing political season? It won't be the last that we see, so.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that it's not like we haven't seen these kind of changes happen in the past, right?
Yeah.
And I think the difference is we have more focus right now on generational differences, social differences, but ultimately, and I always use this as my guide, is when it comes to the workplace, if we keep focused on what the output is or what the expectations are for your business, it goes back to leadership. You need to have leaders that are role models and leaders that help to keep their employees focused on getting work done. I think that idle hands sometimes are the ones that create incivil situations. And so the more occupied that I think people can be and focused on, why do you come to work? What do you do at work? How do you demonstrate respect to your coworker during a work day? I think leadership and HR can help to drive a lot of positive, though there may be those tensions out there, right? And I think companies offer a lot of resources to help with this too. We have SHRM, but there's also EAP. There's a lot of other resources, and I think it's all going to continue to be education, and we go through this cycle every 4 years.
True. I know I talk about TikTok a lot, but I actually saw another video on TikTok and I saved it because I was alarmed. I was alarmed by the video because it was this, I would assume, a member of Gen Z. I don't want to say aggressive because she was upset. She was getting herself worked up. I think maybe unhinged actually is the right word. As it went on, she was specifically talking about baby boomers, that they took everything and left us with nothing, or left her generation with nothing. And I mean, she was and it was like a 4 or 5 minute video. It wasn't a short video, and it was specific. It had specific examples. And there is a large part of that demographic that feels that way. And maybe not specifically towards baby boomers, whatever generation, or maybe all other generations, they feel like have left them with the inability to sustain themselves, to purchase a home, to have all the American dream, essentially. It's gone, according to a lot of them, right? And we know in Colorado Springs specifically, I bought a house for a fraction of what it's worth right now.
Yeah.
At a mortgage rate of 2% and something, and change.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And maybe it will exist again. I don't know, but it might not. I don't know, like when we're talking about incivility in the workplace, people are coming to work with this baggage. Yep. They are just feeling like, what is the point? Why am I going to work my butt off and give myself stress to make someone else rich or make someone else richer or make a corporation richer when they don't care about me? They'll replace me tomorrow. And it is hard to combat that, I think. And I know I took a long time to get to that point, so I apologize. But I have thought about that video and I've watched it several times because I was like, people should be more concerned that people are feeling this way.
Yeah.
It is scary that there is a big portion of our population that feels hopeless.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way because that's not my experience, right? But I have children who are going to feel that way. I don't know. I think when you have a workforce with people who don't get it, and I'm sitting here and I think I'm not having the same experience, but I do understand that feeling of hopelessness. But you have a good portion who, instead of understanding what their position is saying. They're lazy, they're this, they're that, all the other taglines. I just think it's just going to continue the discourse.
And how do we get leadership on board to gain that understanding or that sympathy of that particular generation or people who work for you?
People only see what they want to see, and people only hear what they want to hear. I don't know that we're changing anyone's minds. And I don't know that that's our job either.
Yeah.
I think it's coaching to have empathy.
Yeah.
I think many times, I have my
Fine, be the voice of reason, Faith.
But it is our job.
But that's our job. We get those calls all the time. Managers who genuinely want some guidance on how to speak with an employee, right?
But that's a different person if they're asking for guidance.
No, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true. But I think the opportunity is there for, again, leaders to be open-minded. I think it's just, there's still this, like I say, tension. It comes down to the dollars. It's a dollar signs, right? I mean, you just talked about some economic impacts that are real for people that are younger and in the workforce. There's so much more, I think, to the whole thing.
Of course.
Because of the generational differences, the way that Gen Xers, for example, how we were raised and how we do things, very, very different mindset. Is there a right or a wrong? I don't know.
Our way is right.
So now we're going to move into the segment Ask HR, where we go to the online forum, Ask HR, where people can get questions answered by experts. This one comes from user Twilight X Tide, and it is in Colorado. The title is Boss is Forcing Us to Chip In for Company Expenses on a Work Trip. Is this normal? It reads, last week, our team went on a company-sponsored trip for a client event. It wasn't super far, just a few hours away, and the company was supposed to cover the costs. At least that's what I thought. Once we got there, my boss announced that the quote, budget didn't cover everything and asked everyone to chip in for a few things. It started with meals. He said the company will pay for the basics, but if you want anything extra like appetizers or drinks, you're going to have to cover that yourselves. Fine, whatever. But then it escalated. He asked us to split the costs of the rental car upgrade because, quote, the standard option wasn't big enough for the team. Then the kicker, on the last day, he handed us all a list of shared expenses that included things like gas, parking, and even coffee runs that we were expected to Venmo him our share by the end of the week. I'm talking about over $100 per person, which might not sound like a lot to some people, but I wasn't exactly prepared to spend that on a work trip. I feel super weird about this. Is this even legal? Shouldn't the company cover all expenses if it was a business trip? I get that maybe we're on a tight budget, but it feels wrong to make employees pay out of pocket for something that was not optional. I haven't paid him yet because honestly, I don't think I should have to, but I'm worried about how this might affect my relationship with my boss or even my job security. Should I bring this up to HR? What's the best way to approach this without sounding like I'm being difficult? Has anyone else dealt with something like this, and is it standard practice, or is my boss totally out of line here?
He's totally out of line, and I think he's scamming him. I think he's actually still expensing the stuff, and he's taking the money if he's asking them to personally Venmo him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was wondering, did he put it on his card?
Right. I mean, I'm not Venmoing you money. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely illegal and should not be happening. Should they take it to their HR person? Yes. I don't know what their HR person is going to do, but they need to come to Vida HR. And we'll take care of it for them.
I mean, we don't know if the boss is an owner or if it's just a boss.
Right,
it's
true.
It sounds like he's just a boss, right? This whole thing is outrageous. I can't even imagine the audacity. Some people really have a lot of audacity, so I guess I shouldn't be so surprised.
Well, gas and parking on a I'm like, no.
I mean, yes, you're accustomed to not the company not paying if you're having an alcoholic beverage, right? I mean, that's fine.
Right.
That's expected. But for an upgrade on the car, that's just weird.
Agreed.
Well, and maybe hopefully the company has a policy, a travel policy. We have a per diem policy. How much you get for breakfast, how much you get for lunch, how much you get for dinner. So
I don't think this company has.
I highly doubt it too, but maybe you need one.
Yeah, so though there isn't any federal law requiring employers to pay for business expenses, there are many states, including Colorado, that do have laws that require employers to pay for certain work-related expenses.
And this does take place in Colorado. So
yeah, this situation would appear that if the employer were to take any deductions from this employee, for example. So if the employee did not Venmo the employer, if the employer tried to come after the employee, that could be in violation of the Colorado Wage Act.
Definitely. But it's just so weird how the manager is going about this. It doesn't feel like it's legit. Like, why wouldn't the whole Venmo thing has me completely weirded out? Like, if I was this person, I would just never do it and just be really super sketchy whenever he follows up on it. Like,
Well, I think
sorry, I'm a little short this week. Checks in the mail.
No, but I think the whole scenario kind of implies to us that there probably isn't any policy about how this company is reimbursing for expenses. And so we highly recommend that they get some kind of expense policy in place.
Yeah, except the manager doesn't want that.
Right.
Because then people can personally Venmo him.
Well, and if you don't have an HR, it sounds like you do, if you're asking if you should reach out to HR. Another person would be somebody in the accounting department to say, hey, they say,
What's
I
our
owe
expense
$100.
policy?
Like, what are the expenses for this trip? What's the employee portion? Can you give me some additional insight as opposed to going to your boss? That's all the time we have for today. Faith, we want to thank you for joining us. So thanks for coming today.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure joining.
And of course, we want to thank all of you for listening. If you've enjoyed your time with us, please subscribe and leave a review. If you have any HR stories or questions to share, message us on Instagram at hr.stew. I'm Holly.
And I'm Regina.
And we'll see you next time on HR Stew.